has set in for one of the most enduring maritime mysteries in history. The first record that something was abnormal on the Flannan Isles was on the 15th of December 1900, when the steamer Archer, on a passage from Philadelphia to Leith, noted in its log that the light was not operational in poor weather conditions. When the ship docked in Leith on 18th of December 1900, the sighting was passed on to the Northern Lighthouse aboard the relief vessel. The lighthouse tender Aspersus was unable to sail from as planned. It did not reach the island until noon. Briskly. The purpose of the railway tracks was to facilitate the transport of provisions. The first record that something was abnormal on the Flannan Isles was on December 15th, 1900, when the steamer Archer, on a passage from Philadelphia to Leith, noted in its log that the light was not operational in poor weather conditions. When the ship docked in Leith on December 18th, the sighting was passed on to the Northern Lighthouse board, the relief vessel. The lighthouse tender Hesperus was unable to sail from Briskly, Lewis, as planned on December 20th due to adverse weather. It did not reach the island until noon on December 26th. The lighthouse was manned by 3 men: James Ducat, Thomas Marshall, and Donald MacArthur, with the rotating 4th man spending time on shore. On arrival, the crew of the Hesperus and the relief keeper found that the flagship had no flag. None of the usual provision boxes had been left on the landing stage for restocking, and more ominously, none of the lighthouse keepers were there to welcome them ashore. Jim Harvey, the captain of the Hesperus, attempted to reach them by blowing the ship's whistle and firing a flare, but was unsuccessful. A boat was launched, and Joseph Moore, the relief keeper, was put ashore alone. He found the entrance gate to the compound and the main door both closed, the beds unmade, and the clock unwound. Returning to the landing stage with this grim news, he then went back up to the lighthouse with Hesperus' second mate and a seaman. A further search revealed that the lamps had been cleaned and refilled. A set of oilskins was found, suggesting that one of the keepers had left the lighthouse without them. There was no sign of any of the keepers, neither inside the lighthouse nor anywhere on the island. Moore and 3 volunteer seamen were left on the island to attend the light, and Hesperus returned to Lewis. Captain Harvey sent a telegram to the Northern Lighthouse board dated December 26th, 1900, stating, "A dreadful accident has happened at the Flannans. The 3 keepers, Ducat, Marshall, and the occasional, have disappeared from the island. The clocks were stopped, and other signs indicated that the accident must have happened about a week ago. Poor fellows, they must have been blown over the cliffs considerable evidence of damage caused by recent storms. A box 33 meters above sea level had been broken and its contents strewn about. Iron railings were bent over. The iron railway by the path was wrenched out of its concrete, and a rock weighing more than a ton had been displaced. On top of the cliff, at more than 60 meters above sea level, turf had been ripped away as far as 10 meters from the cliff edge. On December 29th, 1900, Robert Muirhead, a Northern Lighthouse Board superintendent, arrived to conduct the official investigation into the incident. Muirhead had originally recruited all 3 of the missing men and knew them personally. He examined the clothing left behind in the lighthouse and concluded that Duquette and Marshall had gone down to the northern landing stage, and that MacArthur, the occasional, had left the lighthouse during heavy rain in his shirt sleeves. He noted that whoever left the light last and unattended was in breach of NLB rules. He also noted that some of the damage to the west landing was difficult to believe unless actually seen. From evidence which I was able to procure, I was satisfied that the men had been on duty up till dinner time on Saturday, the 15th of December. That they had gone down to secure a box in which the mooring ropes, landing ropes, etc. were kept, and which was secured in a crevice in the rock about 110 feet above sea level, and that an extra large sea had rushed up the face of the rock, had gone above them, and coming down with immense force, had swept them completely away. Whether this explanation brought any comfort to the families of the lost keepers, Duquette left a wife and 4 children, MacArthur a wife and 2 children, is unknown. This development did, however, tarnish the lighthouse's reputation for many years after the incident. No bodies were ever found, but there have been some mysterious sights resulting in fascinated national speculation in newspapers and periodicals of the era. Implausible stories ensued, such as a sea serpent had carried the men away, that they had arranged for a ship to take them away and start new lives, that they had been abducted by foreign spies, or that they had met their fate through the malevolent presence of a boat filled with ghosts. The baleful influence of the phantom of the 7 hunters was widely speculated locally. More than 10 years later, the events were still being commemorated and elaborated on. The 1910 ballad Flannan Isle by Wilfred Wilson Gibson refers erroneously to an overturned chair, an uneaten meal laid on the table, indicating that the keepers had been suddenly disturbed. Yet as we crowded through the door, we only saw a table spread for dinner, meat and cheese and bread, but all untouched and no one there. As though when they sat down to eat, ere they could even taste, alarm had come, and they, in haste, had risen and left the bread and meat. For at the table head a chair lay tumbled on the floor. However, in a first-hand account made by Moore, the must have been after dinner sometime they left. Over time, a story has developed of the existence of unusual logbook entries. They supposedly have Marshall saying on the 12th of December that there were severe winds the likes of which I have never seen before in 20 years. He also said to have reported that the cat had been very quiet and Donald MacArthur had been crying. MacArthur was a veteran mariner with a reputation for brawling, and thus it would be strange for him to be crying in response to a storm. Log entries on December 13 were said to have stated that the storm was still raging and that all three men had been praying. This was also puzzling, as all three men were experienced lighthouse keepers who knew they were in a secure structure 150 feet above sea level and should have known they were safe inside. Furthermore, there had been no reported storms in the area on the 12th, the 13th, and 14th of December. The final log entry is said to have been made on December 15th, stating storm ended, sea calm, God is over all. However, an investigation by Mike Dash for the 14 Times revealed that the logbooks were fictional. Later additions to the story. Subsequent researchers have taken into account the geography of the islands. The coastline of Eileen Moor is deeply indented with narrow gillies called geos. The West Landing, which is situated in such a geo, terminates in a cave. In high seas or storms, water would rush into the cave and then explode out again with considerable force. It was possible MacArthur may have seen a series of large waves approaching the island and knowing the likely danger to his colleagues, ran down to warn them, only to be washed away as well in the violent swell. Recent research by James Love discovered that Marshall was previously fined 5 shillings when his equipment was washed away during a huge gale. It is likely in seeking to avoid another fine that he and Ducat tried to secure their equipment during a storm and was swept away as a result. The fate of MacArthur, although required to stay behind to man the lighthouse, can be guessed to be the same. Love speculates that MacArthur probably tried to warn or help his colleagues and was swept away too. This theory also has the advantages of explaining the set of oilskins remaining indoors and MacArthur's coat remaining on its peg. Although perhaps not the closed door and gate. Another theory is based on the first-hand experiences of Walter Aldebert, a keeper on the Flannans from 1953 to 1957. He believed one man may have been washed into the sea, but then his companions, who were trying to rescue him, were washed away by more rogue waves. A further proposal is based on the psychology of the keepers. Allegedly, MacArthur was a volatile character. This may have led to a fight breaking out near the cliff edge by the West Landing that caused all three men to fall to their deaths. Theories continue to emerge, but the truth of what transpired on that desolate island in the winter of 1900 remains hidden beneath the waves, shrouded in the mists of time, leading us to wonder if the Flannan Isles Lighthouse will ever